The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, we are so excited to get started in just a couple of minutes. We wanted to give our managers who haven't joined yet a few more minutes to hop on the call. So we'll get started in about 2 minutes or so hang tight. Thanks. Just to let those of y'all that have logged on since we made this quick announcement, we are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. We're just giving everybody a few more minutes to hop on, so we will get started in about a moment or two. Thank you. Hey y'all, we wanted to welcome you to the next installment of our managers webinars. So for those of y'all tuning in for the first time, I'm Bethany, Senior Operations Manager for Hand & Stone.
And I'm Melissa, Regional Operations Manager. We're so excited to introduce to you our new topic, retaining a spa associate in their first 60 days.
All right, so for those of you that don't know us, Melissa and I have worked in the spa as Hand & Stone managers before, and so we just wanted to take a second to acknowledge all of the hard work that y'all put in, because when it comes to training new SAs, we know you put in a lot of work and time into these spa associates. You spend weeks and weeks interviewing, hiring, training, trying to find who you hope is going to be the right fit. And we know how incredibly frustrating it is to hire someone and have them not complete training or only last a few weeks and then just completely quit. So we wanted to get real today. So this is the real world, and we're going to talk about real things. We know there are a ton of agendas and training topics and all that good stuff out there, and we will touch on those. But what we really want to discuss is going to be the reality of balancing training a new SA and the interruptions that pop up from employees and clients, especially how to make sure this does not get you off the path of training.
Right, and we want to make sure that these new spa associates feel supported, and we remind them why they joined. They're starting to get the hang of the job in the first 30 days, and we want to avoid them feeling frustrated. Look, for most of us, learning something new is very uncomfortable, so we have to keep this in mind in the first 30 days.
Right. So the next 30 to 60 days we want to touch on too, because what you're going to need to do here is observe. So you'll want to watch for what didn't stick, help them help themselves, and we'll talk about the first one-on-one also. So they need to see on paper how they're doing. You want your new hires to be immediately used to benchmarks and performance reviews while they're still in learning mode.
Right, and this is where we want to invite you to be humble.
Yes.
Look, at the end of the day, our job is to make sure these spa associates want to come to work the next day.
Yes, we don't need to waste your investment in time. So let's go ahead and start with the basics real quick. Let's talk about that onboarding and training.
So we want to set them up for success before we even dive into that onboarding and training and make sure we start off on the right path. A large part of what retention is setting expectations. You want to make sure they understand what the job is. Set them up for an observation interview after your initial one-on-one interview. Have them shadow for a few hours, connect with them after, and see what questions they may have, and to make sure this is a right fit on both ends.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So many essays interview too, to Melissa's point, thinking that this is a receptionist job, just answering phones and booking appointments, and that is not what this is. We all know that very well. So if they're still interested in the position and you still think they're a good fit, you do not need to overwhelm them with the entire manual. Just give them the first 2 sections. That's all they're going to be working on the first couple of days anyway. So just give them the first 2 sections of the essay manual. You can give them the webinars too that pertain to the first day as a little bit of homework to kind of help them prepare. So y'all hear these words like manuals and agendas, and you think that we don't get it, which is fine. You're thinking that that's not the reality. That's not how this goes. But we want to take a second to tell you that we do get it. Like we said earlier, Melissa and I have been in the spa. We've interviewed, hired, trained for the spas that we manage, just like y'all are doing on a day-to-day basis. And we know that this is not the only thing going on in the spa. Melissa and I know very well there's going to be interruptions. There's going to be employee issues. And we've both seen our fair share of stories. I mean, Melissa, weren't you telling me a story the other day about a therapist who dramatically burst into a spa associate training because they needed a day off to get their dog a haircut or something like that?
Yes, we know these bizarre things pop up. And we've heard a lot from you guys in our responses that these interruptions were one of the most common things y'all told us. They're going to be interruptions anytime you're in the spa, so you need to plan for them. Designate a go-to while you're handling trainings, maybe an assistant manager, a lead. Heck, it can even just be a seasoned spa associate to handle some of these common issues like client complaints or employee issues. This person doesn't necessarily have to resolve the issue, but at least redirect the person that has the issue, that someone will be with them by the end of the day or the next morning that you're in a training, just so that everyone's not having a chaotic kind of mess. You have to remember that you need to go at the pace of your student as well. Mm-hmm. Everyone learns differently, so every training will differ in the pace, and you need to take that into account. We've mentioned before organizing and prioritizing, and this is a prime example of where prioritizing comes into play.
Absolutely.
You want to utilize the training structure in the manager's manual to stay on track, which is a screenshot there on day 1. You can see at the bottom this says corresponding webinars. So balance your training with those. Explain the Welcome, Connect, Empower, and then have them watch the webinar on it. This gives you a few minutes to pop out to check on the spa or to deal with anything that may fall into that emergency category.
Right. And to your point, too, a second ago about going at the pace of your student, don't forget about those spa associate learning profiles, because that's going to help y'all figure out what the pace of your student is. And I mean, how many of y'all out there can say that you've hired an essay and realized that you made a mistake? I know I can.
I've been there too, absolutely.
So this is why your first day should be all about that sales training. We want to set their expectations for the job they will be doing, and this allows us to see if they have what it takes. Actually, the Myers in Texas, give them a quick shout out. They're a great example of this. In their training, spa associates don't even touch Millennium until they finish sales training. You have to bring out that personality in them. This is what we talk about all the time as far as hiring for talent, and Millennium is not going to be your first priority. Let's be honest. When we've invested time and money into interviewing, hiring, and training for weeks and weeks and weeks, you do not want to waste that investment.
Absolutely. We can teach Millennium. We can't teach personality.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So the next piece of this is confirming retention. We want to measure retention to make sure that your trainee has absorbed everything you have taught them and discover what you need to go back over. Don't get sucked into presentation mode here.
Yeah.
They will nod their heads and they say they understand, but you actually need to confirm and make sure this is happening.
Yeah. And as you're training too, you can observe the person that you're training to determine if they're actually learning what you're teaching and not just listening. So this means actually engaging them. Ask questions as you go. If you're, for example, if you're training on the benefits of the lifestyle program and you're using the SA manual, then you have them watching that webinar on it, before you move on to the next topic, ask them questions that get you more than a yes or no response. Make sure that they're actually learning the information. Role play with them on that stuff.
Right. And if you're getting a lot of head nods and ahas, but they struggle putting it into play, you may need to switch your style and approach to training this particular person. Is the way you are delivering the information right for this person? It's going to change each time.
Exactly. And training should include a variety of materials and methods so that you're triggering different types of learning, because honestly, when people start, we don't know how they learn. So we need to give them a little bit of time to see what style of training is going to fit best for them. The SA training manual, LMS webinars, live shadowing and role playing, quizzes, and actual just discussion of the information are all these different tools that you have.
So we do this all the time when we do workshops or train and field visit.
Yep.
We have to pay attention and change our approach and evaluate retention versus the head nod every single day. And so we'll challenge you to do the same thing as well.
Yeah. And my spas out there that I support are probably laughing a little bit at me because I'm sure they see me stopping myself all of the time from entering presentation mode. And the information is fantastic, but we need to pay attention to how people are learning and not get stuck in that speech. So if y'all can do it, absolutely. But at the end of the day, this is about retention. It's not about that initial training. And if we're being honest, we need them more than they need us. And we've all been frustrated when a spa associate goes through a few days of training, they go to lunch, and then they never come back, and all of a sudden, surprise, you've been ghosted. So I know I've been there, and I know many of my managers have as well, and it is the most frustrating thing ever. So the first 30 days, they should be about defense, not offense. So we want to coach them, but we also need to continue selling the position. Build them up, make training a positive experience, and most of all, manage their own expectations for their learning. I don't know about y'all, but we all had to start somewhere, and I was very hard on myself when I started learning because I didn't know it all right off the bat, and a lot of people are. So create an environment where they know it's okay not to know all the answers right away, and empower them to ask you questions.
Yeah, so at different points, they're going to be out there on their own, and we know they need to learn a lot of hands-on, and in the moment, we need to properly prepare them for this so they don't feel beat down for not initially knowing the answer. But the fatal flaw here in this scenario is a spa associate who feels too embarrassed to ask questions. They will get overwhelmed, and they will not last. So a little tip I have for you in this time period is maybe take them to a quick casual lunch or a quick coffee, and don't hesitate to be forward. Ask them if they're happy with the position. Are they enjoying it? What their favorite part is, any struggles, and try to connect with them on a personal level, but still in a very professional way. This is a more casual and comfortable situation that will allow them to open up more than in the office. Maybe do you have children? Are they attending school? If they have another job, you can talk about that. I never got too personal, like significant others, just sticking to some base topics so they see that you care about them on a personal level and not just another body that's filling a job for you.
Exactly. So I don't know about y'all, but this is my personal favorite part of the webinar. We'd like to welcome our next guest speaker for this month to the webinar. We're going to have Sapphire talk to us from North Richland Hills in Texas. She's managed that spa for several years now and has some really, really great tips as far as retaining SAs and really helping them to be a long-term part of the team. So, Miss Sapphire, do we have you on?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, we're good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Of course. Awesome. So, we would love to start by asking you to share your onboarding process with us, if that's okay. How's it set y'all up for success with essay retention?
Yeah, so the first 3 days of training is what we like to call our boot camp. It consists of the basics, general knowledge of services, phone calls, scripting, and Millennium. So kind of a breakdown is day one, we start introductions, we tour the spa, we do new hire paperwork, and we start on chapters 1 and 2 of the Spa Associates Manual. Day two, we review, of course, role play chapter 2's Welcome, Connect, Empower, membership pitch, and gift card pitch. Then we move on to an introduction of Millennium and begin mock phone calls and booking and training mode. Day 3, we role play and the Spa Associates begin taking supervised phone calls and start booking member appointments. Days 4 to 5, depending on their progress, we focus on role playing and progressing to booking appointments for both members and non-members, as well as checking in and out members. And then week 2, the Spa Associate learns the daily duties and begins supervision of taking intros and doing the actual Welcome, Connect, Empower live. Day 1 training is usually conducted by myself or our owner, Kim. This ensures that all incoming trainees receive the same information. Additionally, this allows us to assess the Spa Associate's strengths, weaknesses, and attitude, and how they might fit in with the different personality groups of our 4 locations. Depending on the learning curve of each SA, we decide if we will continue day 2 to 3 training ourselves or pass them over to the management team of their home spa, starting with the harder requirements of the job and holding off on simple tasks such as laundry. It allows both us as management and the SA to determine if this job is really a good fit for them.
That's fantastic. And I think it's a huge, huge piece of what's helped y'all be so successful, that you start with the harder parts of it, like you said, the sales piece, and wrap it up with the basics like laundry. Everybody does laundry at home. They know how to do it in the spa. So
Hopefully.
hopefully. So I think that's a fantastic point.
So Sapphire, how long would you say a SA is in training mode before they transition into the driver's seat and are scheduled on actual spa associate shifts?
So we generally like to schedule our trainings to start on a Monday to utilize a full work week. We never train on a Saturday or Sunday because the spas are usually too busy on these days to commit our full attention to them. But after this, depending on how they progress, they generally switch over to the driver's seat after the first week and a half to 2 weeks.
Okay, fantastic. How far into that do you determine if someone's going to be the right fit or not?
Really, you can see if somebody's going to be a good fit within the first 3 days of training. We look out for some common signs that we've noticed in good SAs and bad SAs. Good ones, they take notes, they ask questions, they take initiative when it comes to role playing, they retain information, they come to work on time, and they generally just seem excited about the job. For someone who generally isn't a good fit, usually they don't take direction well, they repeatedly ask the same questions, they seem disinterested, and they come in or call out within the first few days. But my number one piece of advice is just following your gut feeling. If you feel that something is kind of off about a new hire, listen to your instincts. Those are generally the ones that don't work out in the long run.
That's a really good point. Thank you. I think too many people try to justify their hire when it's better to just listen. So I think that's great.
I agree. Definitely trust your gut. So Sapphire, from your experience, what is the most effective way to provide correction or constructive criticism to this new hire?
The most effective way that I've found is just being honest. You don't have to be aggressive with somebody, but you don't want to sugarcoat things either. Address an issue as soon as possible, and most importantly, explain why you're handling something the way they do. You want to treat any mistakes as a learning opportunity. Explain it in detail so they can see the big picture, and afterwards have the SA correct their own mistakes. So for example, if a spa associate asks a client, I had a gift card over the phone, but didn't ask for the number to verify, we usually explain the worst case scenarios. Like if the gift card had a $0 balance, it's a promotional card for another location and why they wouldn't be able to use it, etc. The spa associate would then be instructed to call the client back to get the gift card number and to verify it. So this way they understand why they have to get it and they're responsible going back and getting that information.
Yes, girl, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen that happen in the spa too, where people come in booked for an M50 and they have a gift card for like a Tranquility or something like that. It's horrible on a Saturday. It's really difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah. So with that, and by the way, I want to say, I think it's a really good point too, that you have the spa associates fix their own issue. Melissa and I were talking about this the other day, and it helps really kind of cement that for them rather than just fixing it for them. So with that, how do you balance client and employee interruptions while you're doing this onboarding for a spa associate without allowing it to be a distraction from the actual learning process?
So for training, we generally try to plan ahead. Our best setup is to have 2 spa associates manning the front desk while training takes place in the office. Once we've moved on to the role-playing portion, we move to the lobby after the top of the hour so they can actually interact with the other spa associates and become familiar with the front desk. However, you will always have one of those days where an SA will call out or the spa just ends up being very busy. On these days, we like to incorporate distractions into the training. If I have to take a phone call, I ask the spa associate to look over the 5 qualifying questions to make sure all of them are asked and explain why we asked them. If I need to book an appointment, I review the steps with them afterwards. If we have a client issue, I explain the reasoning behind my decisions and actions. Really, as frustrating as distractions can be, they can turn out to be great learning opportunities. Not only does the spa associate learn the reasoning behind each action and reaction, but they also get to see and experience these firsthand this way.
That's a really good point. I love that.
Especially the why behind it.
Yes.
Everyone needs to know that to really let it sink in. And it's a great example that distractions really can be a good training opportunity.
Yep.
So what do you all do to make sure that spa associates are not overwhelmed and they feel like a part of the team from the very beginning?
So this is actually one of my favorite things to do, just really connecting with them. It's very similar to our Welcome, Connect, and Empower for our clientele. New hires should be familiar with their coworkers and surroundings. You want to break the ice and introduce your new hire to the rest of the team, give them a tour of the spa, and outline the training so they have an idea of what to expect. You want to let them know that it's okay to pause training, to ask questions, get water, and to use the bathroom. And it's also really important to have a bit of fun during training. During role playing, we like to make up silly names and occupations. You definitely want to take short breaks throughout the day to allow for interaction between the employees, and just little things like this can really put somebody at ease and make them feel a part of the team.
Ah, I love it. I love it. So what is your one big piece of advice when it comes to this topic for the rest of the managers out there?
My number one piece of advice is always look at the big picture. Even we are guilty of crisis hiring. In the long run, they don't last. Take your time, find the right fit. It will be worth it in the end.
Yes. Oh, that
Fantastic.
is the best piece of advice you could give. Thank you so, so much. I know we really appreciated having you speak, and I'm sure everybody else does too. Those were some really fantastic tips.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. See you in a couple weeks for Get On Your Feet.
Yay!
Bye. Okay, so we wanted to take a second too, because we're seeing some questions come in. Just to let y'all know, we added in a space at the very end of the webinar where we will absolutely scroll through all of these questions and answer them. So send them in as you're coming up with them, and we will touch on all of these at the end. Never fear.
Okay, so managers, at this point, we may think that your new spa associates are good to go, but we still have some work to do from day 30 to 60. We have spoken a lot to catering to this new employee, but the first 30-day one-on-one is where we execute accountability by delivering this performance evaluation in the first week of the month. They have to get used to be given feedback. They are in learning mode, so they can be conditioned with these reviews. But you don't want to wait too long or you lose the opportunity to create an atmosphere of accountability.
Yep.
At this point, if you wait too long, it will seem like they're in trouble rather than a coaching approach.
Right. And look, usually when you hire, like Sapphire was saying, it's to fill an immediate void, which is what we want to avoid. And other tasks build up. You're itching to get back to them. We've all been there. And there's a lot going on in the spa. And if we're honest with ourselves, there's very few of us who continually interview and keep that pipeline open for when you need somebody to fill that front desk. So we need the investment we've made in these employees to pay off. The front desk is the support you create it to be, so don't allow it to be forgetful, lazy, or unpleasant.
So elaborating on this 30-day one-on-one, essentially this is a performance evaluation, but the phrase one-on-one seems a little more softer. This is when you will have to remind them what their job is. You may see some spa associates start to slack off a bit or even forget some steps that you know they know. This is also when most managers feel more comfortable with the new spa associates and don't put as much of an emphasis on coaching. Don't get comfortable too quickly.
Yep.
Evaluate their performance to determine what didn't stick in the first time and continue to coach.
Right. And continue selling the position too. Observing and coaching and motivating. Don't forget those pieces as well. That all goes throughout that last 60 days. This is where you can start to build those boundaries with your coaching as well. So look, it might be uncomfortable to admit, but not everybody's team gels the way it should, especially when you add new people into the mix. So tension is probably going to be high from being short-staffed, current essays, especially your competitive ones. They may feel threatened that they're going to lose sales to the new person. And look, we're not saying that you need to expect this, but just be conscious of potential signs of tension. No, not everybody's going to be immediate besties.
And the fatal flaw here is assuming they retained everything in the first 30 days and will put it into play. Don't forget to observe so you know where more coaching is needed.
Yes.
So at this point, the spa associate's comfortable and they're going to make mistakes. And you can't lose your cool. It is possible you do not consider this employee a new employee because they've been on for a month or so, but they still are going through situations for the very first time. We may have told them how to do something once before, but you have to make sure they are comfortable and supported.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I was actually, when we were practicing for pre-sales for Christmas in July, I was coaching a spa with seasoned spa associates. And you'd be surprised because the initial assumption would be that the employees that have been there for several years already get this. They already know how it works. They've done a pre-sale for Black Friday too. But surprisingly, these were the ones that actually appreciated almost more than the new spa associates the chance to practice this, and they needed just as much attention working out the kinks as the newer spa associates did. So I say that to remind you not to forget working with your stars even after that 60 days, because training is always continual, and the most of it's in that first 60 days, but don't forget that they're still going to need to work some of the kinks out of some of this stuff.
Right, and it's easy enough when you find a mistake from a spa associate, whether their first 30 or 60 days or they've been with you a few years, to fix it yourself. You know, maybe an incorrect service code, an overbooked service provider, missing credit card info. If you fix it yourself, this is not teaching the spa associate not to make the mistake again. They will continue to make the mistake because they did not learn it was wrong and why it was wrong.
Yeah.
So I personally learned this firsthand when I was a manager in the beginning. My OCD was always in high gear when I was scanning the appointment book, and I felt like everything needed to be perfect. So I'd fix all the mistakes myself every single day, going through the appointment book, making sure it was perfect. I would tell the spa associates about the mistakes I found, but they still kept happening. I quickly got frustrated and learned they needed to discover what was wrong and fix it themselves so they would learn. Something as simple as MEMT after a membership is sold. Instead of adding it in myself, I would ask them to pull up the membership they sold earlier in the day and tell me what's missing. Quickly, the issue stopped after they figured it out themselves.
Yep, perfect. And just like the educate and ask concept that we use for our member checkouts, they need to know that why for it to stick. So if you're training on Christmas in July and you tell your essays that there's a limit of 2 per person, but you're also following that up with you need to sell X amount of dollars for their sales goal and they'll get a certain prize. Most spa associates are going to wonder, well, why the heck do I need to stick with a limit? They want us to sell like $20,000 in gift cards. So explaining the why behind the rule of 2 per person ahead of time will have them in that more positive mindset going into promotion. And of course, the why being that we don't want to saturate the market with discounted gift cards, then the clients aren't going to have a reason to sign up or keep their memberships.
So I'm sure we've all asked ourselves this question at one point. You may have run into a new spa associate that you have thought about this before. Evaluate your training. When you classified them as a certain learning type, was it the right one? Mm-hmm. Have you adjusted your coaching around what has worked for them? Has it been 2 months of straight nothing but the basics?
Yeah.
Repeating the same things over and over again and they're not sticking? If the answer to this question is yes, you have to ask yourself if you want to spend the rest of their employment with you doing nothing but training on the basics and repeating yourself, because that's likely what the future looks like.
Yep.
And you need to make sure that the decision for yourself, your team, and your spa.
Yes. So you can ask them to, and I absolutely would. Ask them if there's a different way that they can learn this. Chances are, if you feel like they're not a good fit, they probably feel like the same way. So as we've been going through this too, I know we mentioned we've been getting a bunch of questions. So let's take a look and start answering some of these. All right. So, okay, our first question is fantastic. We've got a question asking about the training agenda for day 1 through 5. This is in the manager's training manual on the intranet. So this is the one that was created recently by managers for managers. And it starts, we actually had a screenshot of it a little earlier on of that page for those first days for the training. So it's right in that manager's webinar or manager's training manual. Let's see. So there's a great question on here about letting people go earlier on. And I think, and this was when Sapphire was doing her guest speaking with us. And I think a large part of this is they do a very good job of setting expectations for spa associates right from the start. That's why they start with that sales training piece, so they can set expectations for the job. And like we just mentioned too, if you feel like they're not a good fit, they probably feel the same way. So you can just have a very real conversation with them.
Yeah, it usually doesn't come off as a shock, I don't think, early on in the first few days. I think if we drag it out a few weeks and they think they're doing what they're supposed to, then it would be a little more painful and they're more shocked.
Yep. There's a question about laundry too. It's a team effort. So it's not something where you need to have spa associates tackling this all by themselves. The best teams all work together to tackle things like this. And let's see, we answered that one. Let's see, all right. We got some really good questions. We're just going through to make sure we've gotten everything that we did not already answer. There's a really good comment about the essay webinars that spa associates can take at home before day 1. When you hire them on to kind of help avoid them being clueless, you're giving them that portion of the spa associate manual that corresponds with it. So these webinars aren't something where it's going to be a ton of information that they're getting overwhelmed with that you need to really get deep into explaining. It's going to kind of set the stage. Some of these webinars, like the membership, welcome, connect, and empower one, is only about 2.5, maybe 3 minutes long, and just kind of shows them how it's supposed to be done. This is great because it gives them an opportunity to build up some questions so you can dive into answering their questions and explaining the why when you start that training.
So another good question that in here is some suggestions when you're pulled away for something that you have no choice in avoiding. So maybe a true emergency. This is going to be rare, I think, when you're thinking the big picture, but if it does happen, I think it's perfectly fine to be honest with the new hire. You know, I'm going to step away for just 2 to 3 minutes to touch base on something, give them a little piece of the manual to go over, address it, and then get right back into training.
Yeah, time it with a webinar too if you need to, because
Yep.
you don't need to be in there while they're reading through a portion of the manual or watching a webinar.
Yeah, and you can re-enroll them in a webinar that they maybe did at home and you think they need a little bit more attention to. That's perfectly fine.
Yep. And yes, we got a couple of questions about this. We are really saying to just start with the sales piece. As far as what to teach them on that first day, it's in the manager's training manual on that first day. I would follow that to the script, because that's been made by managers for managers to make your training experience for both yourself and the spa associate easier and more fluid. So absolutely follow it.
A good question came in about training spa associates together. Maybe it's a new location or you're hiring more than one at a time. Depending on their personalities, I do think you can train together. Sometimes it's nice that they can role play off each other. I personally like an even amount so that they can kind of pair up, but that's absolutely fine.
All right. It looks like we've made it through most of the questions on here. If there's anything that we didn't touch on, absolutely feel free to just post that question or shoot it over to us. Otherwise, we've made it through most of these questions. So what we will let you know is where to find all of the supporting material and documents. We've got the manager's training manual, which we talked about, the spa associate monthly performance reviews, performance improvement plans, and the learning profiles. You can find all of these on the intranet. And then we've got the archived webinars for those of y'all that are tuning in for the first time. Past webinars are all saved on the LMS as well, the Tortle. And we also have the promotional calendar, which is always updated for the next 3 months in the weekly operations and aesthetics update emails. This allows you to prepare what you need to train spa associates on. So you can work this in for the newbies or brush up on training with your more seasoned spa associates.
Go ahead and mark your calendars. Our next webinar will be focusing on training the trainer, developing department leads. We'll see you on Tuesday the 11th, same time, same place.
Yeah. 11:15. We'll talk about, we are so excited to see y'all for the next one, and we hope you have a good Tuesday.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.